Hey guys, I'm Naguura, and today I'm going to talk about my experience with the E1 to E12 Savage raids in Final Fantasy XIV. So what happened was that Limit Max posted on Twitter that he's looking for people that want to join him on a project where he wants to clear all of the raids of the current expansion in Final Fantasy XIV on Savage, with people that are not experienced and that want to do it completely blind without knowing anything about those fights. And because I currently didn't like playing World of Warcraft and the New World release was delayed, I figured, yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it, right? So I messaged Max and it all kind of happened really quickly. I ended up downloading the game and I wanted to play Red Mage because they were looking for a caster, and Red Mage kind of looked interesting to me. So I already struggled with downloading the game and buying the game, first of all, which probably was more difficult than anything I've done in the Final Fantasy XIV so far. So once I finally defeated the buying the game boss and I managed to install the game, I was completely overwhelmed at first. I knew nothing about the game, absolutely nothing. I had no clue about how the interface looks, how jobs work, literally anything, roles. Everything was completely confusing to me. But I liked that it kind of gave me motivation to get better and to learn the game. And yeah, so the first experience was definitely overwhelming. Of course, since I boosted, it would be a lot less overwhelming, of course, if I would have started with level 1. But because the raid was supposed to happen like a week from where I joined the project, there was no way I would have made it in time anyway to level normally. So I kind of had to boost if I wanted to join that project. But it ended up being fine. It ended up being totally fine. I think it was a good decision for me personally, because otherwise I would have missed this project. And that would have been a shame, because I really enjoyed what we did together as a group. And I really enjoyed this whole process of clearing all the raids. I was so overwhelmed, but also really into the game at the start, that I ended up playing off stream even, which is something that doesn't happen all the time, because obviously I'm a streamer, I'm playing video games all day, every day. So whenever I'm not streaming, I sometimes just feel like doing something else. Unless I'm really passionate about a game. You know, this kind of feeling where you wake up and you want to play the game and you just want to do nothing but play. And that is something that I actually did have with Final Fantasy at the start, when I was really into like learning my job, learning everything, just figuring out how the game works. So that was really, really cool. I was definitely not expecting that, because otherwise I probably would have started playing this game a long time ago. But yeah, I did have some expectations. I didn't think I would hate the game, but I definitely didn't think I would like it as much as I ended up liking it. So yeah, that was amazing. Now let's quickly talk about the group itself that we had with Limit Max, just because people might wonder why I switched to healer later on. So the whole TLDR of our group was that, again, we wanted to have people that are either content creators or like WoW players that have some sort of history with MMOs, and that are completely blind and haven't really played Final Fantasy before. That was like the requirements that Max wanted for the group. But there ended up being something that was kind of like an unforeseen thing that happened. Basically, Limit Max and some other people started not having as much fun in the group, because we had various different skill levels and different experiences in the group. And especially since we're completely new players, some people just have a little bit of a longer learning curve versus others, right? If someone who played WoW in a competitive environment for 15 years is going to come into Final Fantasy, it's probably going to take them less long to understand that game and, you know, like be better at the game than someone who didn't do that, right? That just makes sense. Not to say that those other people with a longer learning curve wouldn't get to that skill level at some point too, but it's just the fact that we were also new and that everyone was in this like learning the fight state or learning the game state, that some people ended up not having or not enjoying the raid so much, because they were a little bit quicker with learning the fights while others were a bit slower. And it just felt frustrating to them, right? Because they wanted to see more of the fight. They wanted to figure out the next mechanic and the next mechanic. Because once you have figured out the mechanic in your head and you have executed it properly and you know how to do it every single time, but then you keep wiping to that same mechanic because other people are not at that point yet, that can be really frustrating, especially in like a environment where you're trying to kill a boss for the first time. So that is something that just ended up happening, and people just didn't enjoy the raid so much anymore. And obviously that's a problem, because This whole project was supposed to be for fun, not some sort of competitive thing. So we all decided as a group that it might be better if we were just switching up the lineup a bit, get in some other players to make sure that the experience level that we have in the group is a little bit more balanced, just so everyone can enjoy the journey, right? So that's why I ended up starting out as a red mage for the first 4 bosses in Eden's Gate, and then I switched to white mage for Eden's Verse and Eden's Promise at the end. So yeah, that's the story about that. And now I'm going to start talking about the actual bosses, the experience, what I think about everything, really. Right, so first of all, I want to talk about some not so in-depth things. Music, I do want to say the music is amazing. I really, really loved the music on all of the fights. I actually ended up listening to music for all of the progression. Even if you were wiping on bosses for like hours and hours and hours and hours, I would still just listen to the music because I just thought it really fits the vibe and I loved it. And I'm a person that doesn't like music in other games necessarily. I've played WoW for 10 years without any sound on, like not even dialogue sound. I had nothing and I didn't mind it one bit. So yeah, I'm not a person that's like necessarily into like the lore or the music that much. Or into like the feeling, but in this game I really enjoyed the music. Then when it comes to the feeling of the bosses, like the way the skyboxes look and the way everything interacts with the boss fight, I really like that as well. On some bosses more than others, but I definitely overall liked it. Especially in the last bosses on like E4S, for example, where you see this whole, like the boss, the face changes. It's really cool. Now, at first, I do want to say that animations are incredibly overwhelming and off-putting. I was really off-put by absolutely flashy animations that a lot of the mechanics have, where your whole screen just turns like white. You're like flashbanged for like a second, you see nothing, and then you go back into the fight. And that's like an animation for a raid-wide AoE. It's definitely just overwhelming, right? Later on, once I got more experience with the game, I didn't mind it as much anymore because I knew those animations are usually tied to... you don't need to see anything at that moment, basically, right? So whenever this huge animation happens that covers your screen, you don't need to see anything else at that moment, so it's not that big of a deal anymore, right? But if you're unexperienced, if you're new at the game, then you don't know that, right? And that's the problem that I had at the start. I did a boss fight and I saw this huge animation covering my screen and I thought, oh my God, I'm missing something. And then I'm like looking around. I feel like I need to look at the floor. I need to look at the room. And I feel like I'm missing things because my screen is covered in whiteness or flashiness, right? And that was definitely something that was overwhelming at the start, and I didn't like it. I definitely didn't like it. I was like, no, why does it have to cover my screen? I don't understand. Later on, again, understood that whenever the screen is covered in an animation, I really don't have to see anything else at that moment, so it's fine. I wouldn't mind if they tune down the animations a little, but I know that people like the animations and I'm really not bothered by it anymore as long as it doesn't cover anything that I don't have to see, right? Like if I need to see something that is important to the fight and there's a huge animation that makes it really hard to see it or impossible to see it, then I have a problem with it. Otherwise, it's fine. Then let's talk about cutscenes in boss fights. I definitely don't think they should be unskippable cutscenes in a boss fight that is a really difficult fight that you might be seeing like many times. That is, I just don't like it. I know that some people maybe don't mind this as a Final Fantasy player, but I personally really do mind, and it just feels like, why not? Like, why can we not skip it? And I understand that there's like some fights where your mana regen keeps going while there's the cutscene going on, and yeah, I understand that, but they could just make it shorter, or just have like a shorter version of the cutscene or something, or let's say you're stunned for a couple of seconds where you regen everything back up and where your cooldowns reset or whatever, just to make this shorter. I don't know. It just feels too much to me personally, because obviously you're not going to watch the cutscene every single time and pay attention to it every single time. So you're just going to like pick up your phone, look at your second screen, and you just get distracted. And I feel like it affects me sometimes that I'm literally just like zoning out, you know, like I'm zoning out doing other things. And then it's like, oh, we're in this boss fight. Oh, you know, it's weird. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about more fight-related things. I really love the fact that this game has so much personal responsibility, a lot more than WoW or other MMOs that I've played before. The reason why I like it so much when something does have a lot of personal responsibility is the fact that it can't just be raid-leaded exactly. You need to know where you have to be at what time, and no one can really help you out. Like, no add-on, no raid leader, no nothing can help you out in this situation. You need to know where you have to be at what time, and being able to execute that properly and not dying feels much better than if someone just told you, hey, you need to go to the purple marker now, right? If the raid leader just told you that and then you did it, then it's like, yeah, you did it, but he kind of told you that you have to go there, you know, like it's not, you know, it just feels less of an achievement than when you manage to figure it out yourself. And that is something that is enforced in Final Fantasy XIV a lot. In all of these raids, you have these kind of like positional requirements that cannot be raid leader, right? Your raid leader can tell you which mechanic is going to come up, but the raid leader cannot tell you where you have to be personally, because each individual person has to be at a different spot, right? So that is something that I really like about this game, especially, you know, when there's like huge puzzles like Lights Rampant, Lions Rampant, and all of the relativities on E12S. It all felt like you as a player are executing this mechanic properly. It's not, your raid leader is not telling you where to be, because they can't. A raid leader cannot tell every individual person where to go. You have to know for yourself. So that's something I really liked, not being that way that is just getting carried along by the raid leader telling you everything, but actually needing to execute it yourself. Then, puzzles. Puzzles are great in this game, and by puzzles I mean something, again, like Light Rampant, Lions Rampant, all that kind of stuff. Love it. I think it's really unique. A lot of the things incredibly unique that haven't really, that are not repetitive. Of course, there's some mechanics that are repetitive, but then there's also very unique abilities for each individual boss fight that you have never seen before. Of course, I haven't played Final Fantasy before. I only have played E1 to E12, but still, just seeing each boss having these unique abilities and unique puzzles that you need to solve is really cool. I love that. Now let's talk about damage downs and vulnerabilities, because that is something that I haven't experienced before. So basically, when you do a mechanic wrong, or you're in the wrong position at the wrong time, then you're getting a debuff, either damage increase on you or a damage decrease, damage output decrease on you. And that is something that I really like, just because the game tells you that you have to execute this mechanic properly. You cannot cheese it, you know? You cannot stand in there and just mitigate it, unless you are a tank and you have an invulnerability. You still get the debuff as like, you know, damage dealer or healer, even if you survive it. And that is something that I really like. On top of, I'm going to talk about the infinite races in combination with this, right? So there's 3 points I want to talk about all at once. The damage downs, vulnerabilities, the damage checks, and the infinite races. Now, all of these things are really good for progression, in my opinion, because you have to execute the boss properly. Because if you get a bunch of damage downs or a player dies or whatever, you can get to the end of the boss fight, you can reach the end rage, but you won't be able to kill a boss if you have min item level, right? Because the damage checks are set pretty tight that you need to execute the fight properly. And that is something that I just really like seeing. Like, you're not able to cheese anything, you're not able to just play sloppily, you're not able to carry a person that makes a mistake through. If anyone makes a mistake and dies or gets damage downs or whatever, you might not be able to make the damage check, right? So that is really cool to see. And then additionally, it also serves as a passive nerf for bosses later on. Now let me explain. At the start, when you have min item level, you cannot have anyone get hit by things, you cannot get damage downs, you cannot get deaths or whatever, because you won't make the enrage. But later on, once everyone has more item level, more gear, then these damage downs and these races actually kind of help you to kill the boss, and they passively nerf the boss even further, not just by you having more item level, because of course everyone having more item level nerfs the boss passively because it's going to be easier, but it also allows you to make more mistakes. In many ways, it makes the boss easier multiple times, not just by the extra damage that you do, but it also means that you can have more people die and you can raise them back up. You don't have to wipe just because 2 people died, right? Because you can raise infinitely. You can have 10 people die, 20 people die theoretically over the course of like a 15-minute fight, and you might still be able to kill a boss, right? So you have like extra nerfs to the bosses without actually needing to nerf the boss. That is something that in World of Warcraft bothers me a lot, right? If bosses get nerfed directly, which is something that happens in WoW, after the World First guilds have cleared the boss, a week later or 2 weeks later, they will nerf the bosses a little because they're so difficult that other guilds that get there might not be able to kill it, or it might take them a really long time. And then after a month, they nerf it again. After 2 months, they nerf it again. And it just keeps getting nerfed until more and more guilds can kill it, which is a horrible system because you will never be able to get experience that the World First guilds had on that boss fight. And that bothers me because I would at least want to be able to get that experience if I wanted to, you know? And that is something that in Final Fantasy is possible because you have all of these passive nerfs to the boss, not only through the gear, but also because you have infinite races that maybe early on it doesn't help you that much because you won't be able to make the damage check, but later on it helps you out a lot because you can still meet the damage check even if you have damage downs and you have races. And then if you get hit by ability where you get a damage down, well, whatever, you didn't die and you get a damage down, you got punished for it, but you're still going to be able to kill a boss, right? So I really love their whole idea and their system behind infinite races, damage downs, also limit break too, right? Limit break can be a tool to help you kill the boss, but if you're doing the boss min item level blind, then the limit break from a healer or from a tank, they help you to see further into the fight. But you won't be able to kill a boss if you use a healer limit break, probably, right? Because you won't be able to meet the damage check. So passively nerfing the bosses multiple times through stuff like limit break, races, damage downs, I think that's a great system. I think it's absolutely great, and I love the way that works. All right, now let's move on. Let's talk about healer checks. So I started playing healer in Eden's Verse and in Eden's Promise. I didn't play Eden's Gate, so I'm not going to talk about that. And I think we can all agree that in Eden's Verse, there was just not enough damage. It was, I was 95% of my buttons were just glare that I pressed, and I barely pressed any healing spells whatsoever. It felt incredibly underwhelming. There was just no damage, and that's why I kept talking about the fact that I really am not enjoying healing that much, because that's the first raid I healed, and it just felt like, why am I here even when I just press 95% of the time glare? It would be much easier if you just bring another damage dealer. I understand why you can't bring another damage dealer, because the whole debuffs get assigned and stuff would be messed up, but I still felt like most of the bosses you can probably solo heal, even with min item level in Eden's Verse. And that just feels bad, right? So I think we can all agree that there wasn't enough damage there. Then I think Square Enix agreed as well, because when we did Eden's Promise, I definitely noticed that there's a lot more damage. So I think everyone agreed on that point, that Eden's Verse wasn't a good healer raid. Eden's Promise felt a lot better. There was a lot more frequent damage, a lot more to heal. It was a lot better. I definitely enjoyed healing a lot more in that raid compared to Eden's Verse. Now, let's talk about shield healer versus healing healer, because that is something that I have noticed on some of the fights that I maybe wish they were different. For example, there were some bosses where shielding healers felt so much more important than healing healers, because a lot of their raid wides are just one hit on everyone that does more than 100% of your HP, right? That was a lot of the raid wides. In fact, almost all of them. I would say like 90% of the damage that happened on the group was just one-shot raid wides, right? Like they just one singular hit on everyone that would kill you if you don't have shields or mitigation or anything like that. And as a healing healer, like as a white mage, it just felt bad. right? Because yes, you can help coordinate your mitigation with your group. That is something you can do no matter who you are. Like no matter if you're the white mage or the ninja or the whoever, you can coordinate mitigation, right? But as your role yourself, your job as a white mage, without helping to coordinate, it felt like you cannot contribute to that kind of damage. Because you saw everyone was full HP, and then the raid wipe happens, and some people die, or everyone dies. And then you're like sitting there and you're thinking, oh, well, yeah, okay, cool. I couldn't have done anything different. You know, like my mitigation wasn't assigned for this. Like my temperance wasn't assigned here. And I have nothing else. I have nothing else to reduce incoming damage, other than making sure that everyone is full HP. And that is something that bothered me for sure. Because most of the time, I just wanted to be a shield healer. Because as a shield healer, you can help a lot and you can make sure those raid wipes don't kill people. And as a healing healer, it just felt like, oh, well, I can heal everyone to full HP, but that's it, right? I can't do more. Basically, there were some fights where healing healers actually were good, where HOTS were good, where constant, like, big AoE heals were good. But I just felt like they were not frequent enough. Because most of the time, like, it felt like 90% of the time you would want to be a shield healer to make sure people don't get one-shot by the raid wipes. And then 10% of the time you liked the fact that you're a healing healer because there was frequent damage happening. So yeah, I wish that maybe would be a bit different. And maybe that happens in Endwalker, because in Endwalker you're going to have like 2 healing healers and 2 shielding healers. So maybe because they make this distinction, they actually are going to split up the damage income a bit more. Maybe they're going to make sure that the healing healers have more frequent damage. And then there's also some damage that is, you know, kind of the one-shot damage where shielding healers are really good. It just needs to be a little bit more of a balance, I felt like. So I don't constantly wish that I had shields, you know. I just constantly was like, oh, I wish I had more mitigation or more shields so I could have done something here. All right, so that's about healing and shielding. Now let's talk about fight length. I personally don't like really long fights, but on some bosses, it was fine in Final Fantasy XIV. I think it was very boss dependent. There were definitely some fights where I would have just wished that they were a bit shorter. Sometimes it just feels like it's like dragging out so long, and it just feels frustrating that you have to do such a long fight. I think the boss fights where it was the most frustrating was when the fight was really long, and then like 10 minutes into the fight, you see an ability for the first time that you've never seen before, or that is like very different to what you've seen before. That feels a bit like it just feels frustrating, because you need to go through those 10 minutes of boss fight where everyone needs to execute everything properly just to reach that moment where you need to even like learn what the ability even does. Like you're not even trying to execute it, you need to realize what it even does. So you need to go around and test stuff out. The reason why I don't like it that much is because sometimes you can just be lucky and figure it out immediately first pull without even like doing anything special. And sometimes you might get misled by something and you think it works this way, but then it doesn't. And then you're just wasting so much time because it's so long into the fight. So that is something that bothered me on some fights, but not on all. Other fights that were also really long, but at the end, they just had repetitive mechanics that we've seen before that are just slightly different. And then it's fine. As long as it's not something that is completely new and completely different, I'm okay with it. Also, sometimes it felt like there were downtimes in the middle of the boss fight that are really easy. And then it just felt like, why is it even there? Like, the boss fight is like 15 minutes long, and then there's like a 2-minute portion where just nothing happens. You're just sitting there and nothing happens, really. Now, some people are saying it's like a little to get a little bit of a breather, to get like a downtime, like a pause for people. And I get that, but I personally would rather not have it in there because it just like elongates the fight. And I don't need a breather in the middle of a boss room. I would just have like back to back to back to back, like difficult stuff happening. I would enjoy that a lot more than have a really long fight where you constantly get like downtimes in between. All right, so that was about the fight length. Now let's talk about, quickly talk about utility and mitigation. Like when I talk about utility, I mean things like the sprint, knockback immunity, and something like, you know, general mobility. Maybe also stuns and stuff like that. I personally like the fact that in this game, everyone has like the same utility. Like everyone has a sprint, everyone has a knockback immunity. And the mobility is a bit different. Like some people have charge or like teleports or whatever, while other people have nothing, like healers. That is something that I like because it makes it a lot better to create boss fights and to also make sure that everyone has the same possibilities of dealing with a mechanic. That is something that I think is cool. It makes it so it's really balanced. It makes it so they know exactly how to deal with a mechanic and whatnot. The thing with the knockback immunity is definitely a bit weird sometimes because there's some boss fights where you can resolve the mechanic with the knockback. Like, if no one had a knockback immunity, you would still be able to execute the mechanic properly. So the fact that you're just completely ignoring the mechanic by using knockback immunity just feels... It feels weird, because the whole knockback immunity thing, the fact that everyone has it... I feel like they should play around that if they want to put a knockback immunity into the game, right? Some knockbacks cannot be immune. And I think that's what Square Enix does whenever they don't want you to immune it. They just say, oh, you know what? You cannot immune that. So I like that they do that. But then on the other hand, there's also knockback abilities that you can immune that you would totally be able to do anyway, even if you're not immuning it. The thing that I like about it, though, is the fact that sometimes it creates like a trap. Sometimes you feel like, oh, I can knockback immune this, so I should. That's like the first thing that you think about. Oh, I can immune it, so I should immune it, right? But then on some fights, it might be better to not actually immune it. It might be better because it puts you in a better position afterwards. And that can be a trap. It can definitely be a trap when you think about how to solve a mechanic. If you don't think about the fact that you should be knocked, then it just can confuse you, and it can create a situation where you might not even think about the fact that you shouldn't be immuning it, right? So I like that kind of interaction. But then on some other fights, like where there's literally just like one knockback in the whole fight, and you're just immuning it, and then you just ignore it, that feels a bit weird. Outside of that, I like everything else. I like the fact that everyone has sprint, and each person can kind of assign it for themselves in like a situation where they wanted to, or you can assign it for a strategy that you're playing. So let's say you play a boss where everyone needs to sprint at this certain moment. That's fine too, right? So you really have like this variety and this possibility of assigning the sprint wherever you want to. I like that too. Now let's talk about mitigation. I really like the fact that everyone kind of has mitigation, you know, like you have mitigation on casters, on melee DPS, on tanks, on healers, physical DPS have stuff as well. And there's like smaller utility as well that can help out with mitigation, like healing increases that you have, even like single target buffs that people can give to others. Some physical range can help out with dispelling as well, which is cool. Tanks can help out with healing on others. Red Mage can raise players and can help out with healing a little as well, even though the heal is not great. But it feels cool. It's small utility, small mitigations that can help the static with certain things. But they're not like completely groundbreaking. Except the Red Mage, I would say. Red Mage is like borderline groundbreaking, I would say, because when you're doing blind progression, then Red Mage is so incredibly valuable. So I would say that Red Mage is like close to crossing the line of having too much utility for a Final Fantasy kind of job, right? Because it looks like, or it seems like Square Enix is trying to not give jobs too much utility to prevent exactly the situation that Red Mage is in, right? You don't want players to use a certain job for a certain thing. You want to make sure that every job is kind of viable and everyone can do the same thing, which mostly is true. But when it comes to blind progression, there's definitely this red mage thing and also the paladin thing a little. Like paladins being so good at like staying alive by themselves for a really long time to see more, and then also help out healing others and stuff. And then you also have the red mage with the races. And then in Endwalker, they get even more mitigation for the group, even more utility, which again might create a situation where everyone wants to have a red mage for early progression, for early blind progression. So that is something that maybe they have to look at that a little bit at the rest mage. I mean, there's some things they can do, right? They could maybe increase the mana cost for the race for the red mage, so you cannot do that many races. Or you could make dual cast not work on the race. I know that would be like an extreme measurement. Maybe dual cast could work on the race, but it doesn't make it instant, but rather just shortens the cast time a lot. That would be like a possibility, right? So instead of it just being an instant cast, it's still, you need to cast it just like shorter, which would still make red mage really good for racing, but it wouldn't make it like OP kinda. So maybe that would solve the problem as well. Or maybe it's fine the way it is. I mean, we'll see how it is in Endwalker. But yeah, they're definitely like, you know, on this like, they're close to crossing the line of being a lot better than other jobs for early progression. Yeah, that's actually kind of it. I think I've talked for a long time already. Sorry about this video being so long. I thought it might be a bit shorter, but no. So I'm sorry about that. I hope I covered most things. The TLDR of all of it is that I just enjoyed it a lot, right? Like I had so much fun. The best thing about all of it was the fact that we're blind. That was 100% the one thing that made me love it so much. The fact that we were blind and the fact that we could recreate the situation where we have min item level and we actually are wiping to stuff like Enrage, even though this is a raid that came out like years ago, right? That is just something that feels so cool that you can just do those old raids and recreate somewhat of a situation, or as close to a situation as possible as people were when they first came out and they first tried this. That is insanely fun, and I loved everything about it. Conclusion is, I absolutely love Final Fantasy raiding, especially like blind progressing. So I'm definitely going to play Endwalker as well. I don't know who I'm gonna raid with and what exactly I'm gonna do, because our blind group with Max, this project is now over, and I also want to play on EU because I've been playing on NA this whole time, and having like 160, 170 MS is really annoying on some situations. Most of the time it's not that bad, but whenever you have to actually react to an animation and not a cast bar, it all of a sudden became this like really annoying thing where you see the animation over there, but it's actually over here, and it's like, ugh, it just created really weird and annoying situations. So I definitely want to play on EU. But yeah, I don't really know any Final Fantasy players on EU. I know some streamers that are playing there, but I would really like to do, like, actually would like to go ham when it comes out. Like when Savage comes out, I would really like to go and clear it as fast as possible with a group. And I'm not sure who I should even approach or ask about this. Yeah, people told me I should ask Sepla maybe, because she knows a lot of people in EU and maybe she has an idea on who can join. So maybe I'm gonna do that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Endwalker, and I'm looking forward to new raids and experiencing the raids at the same time as everyone else. That's gonna be so cool. That's gonna be amazing. So yeah, Final Fantasy is a great game. Final Fantasy 14 is amazing. One more thing I wanted to say is that now that I'm done experiencing all of these Savage raids, I am gonna do Uvu with a full girl group. We're gonna start playing on the 25th of October, so that's gonna be amazing. And I'm currently also clearing UCOP with a half non-experienced group and half experienced group. So that's happening as well. Seth is helping us out. He's raid leading, and people like THD and I are clearing it for the first time. So I'm streaming that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon. And the Uwu is gonna start on, I think we're gonna be playing on Monday and Thursday. I think it's Monday and Thursday that we're gonna be raiding with the full girl group. And I'm also gonna play the main story now. I know, it's gonna happen. So I started playing the main story with the New Game Plus last Friday. So I've done like the first part of ARR. I'm gonna be playing everything. I'm gonna read through every text, every cutscene. I'm gonna do it all. I've started on Friday, as I said, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely had fun. I had fun chilling with chat and just, you know, like pretending I'm, you know, like whatever person and like role playing the whole thing. It was a very different experience, but I thought it was wholesome and fun. And I liked it. So I'm gonna continue doing the MSQ with stream. I'm not guaranteed that I might not, you know, I might get bored at some point and then I'll stop. But for now, I'm enjoying it a lot. So we'll see how far we can get. Maybe we're gonna play everything. Who knows? But yeah, that's what's gonna happen from now on. I'm looking for static for Endwalker. I'm gonna do ultimates with 2 different groups. And I'm also gonna start doing the MSQ as well on stream. So that's my plan for Final Fantasy for now. And we'll see if anything changes. And yeah, game is amazing. If you haven't started playing yet, you should start playing. If you like World of Warcraft, you're probably also gonna like Final Fantasy. So definitely go ahead and try it out. And yeah. That's it. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked my review. I know it's really long, so sorry about that. But yeah, if you liked the video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. Definitely going to do more Final Fantasy content, so just keep that in mind. Also check out my stream over at twitch.tv/Naguura if you want to watch me live. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice rest of your day. You guys are the best. Bye!